Edward Snowden wasted little time jumping on the Panama Papers scandal to troll David Cameron yesterday. David Cameron is at the center of a lot of the revelations that have been coming out in regards to his father. His father, Ian Cameron, his late father, owned a tax haven in the British Virgin Islands, which has under management some £35 million, around $50 million, which allegedly was a scheme that had been set up by his late father to avoid paying any income tax in the United Kingdom. Huge amount of pressure on David Cameron to give more information about that and his knowledge of that tax haven and of those accounts, those offshore funds. David Cameron hid behind the privacy, the veil of privacy, saying this is a private family matter. This has got no impact on UK policy, no impact on no public benefit in disclosing any further information. Edward Snowden wasn't having any of that. He was quick to jump on it with this particular tweet saying, oh, now he's interested in privacy. Fascinating to see that. He trolled him. He trolled him again later on, saying, oh, perhaps it's because the Icelandic resignation of Iceland's PM may explain why the UK PM is so insistent public has no right to know a PM's private, in inverted commas, finances. Joy, the reverberations of this will come on to, because David Cameron subsequently was unable to withstand the political pressure and actually did make a statement in regards to that holding in Blair, his father's holding in Blairmore Limited Fund, which is his offshore fund. But what's your initial thoughts? Well,
I just think, regardless of what you might think with regards to whether it's okay or not for David Cameron to not, disclose this information, it just exposes how much support that Snowden has. Or, I mean, the fact that that first tweet that you mentioned was retweeted 20,000 times or so. I mean, it just, to me, I find it very interesting how many people are supportive of Snowden's stance on this.
Yeah, he does seem to have the moral authority in arguments and discussions about privacy.
Specifically with regards to privacy, yeah, exactly.
Sure, and he is seen as the barometer by which we judge things, rightly or wrongly. And so when he speaks, people listen, and people seem to value his opinion because of what he's gone through. Obviously, the disclosure in 2013 as an NSA contract of all of that. We wouldn't be where we're at in the discussion. We will be having some kind of, the hypothesis is we'd probably be having some kind of discussion about privacy, but we wouldn't be as far down the track, and it wouldn't be quite so transparent, the conversation that we're having.
Oh, absolutely.
Were it not for the revelations that he gave. I think it's particularly pointed against David Cameron because he has been so aggressive in his pursuit under the Investigatory Powers Bill, and which was so-called the Snoopers Charter, which was a particularly aggressive piece of legislation, which is sought to unencrypt encrypted files, to really lay waste to any transparency or any sense of privacy, and actually give huge transparency, run roughshod through all sorts of privacy laws. And now it's seen that he's seeking to hide behind this. He went on later on in the day and saying, well, perhaps with scandals like Russia, China, UK, Iceland, Ukraine, and more, perhaps a new rule: if you're in charge of a country, keep your money in it. Again, there's a lot of value there. We discussed on this show yesterday that in some ways it wouldn't solve the problem entirely, because a lot of the more preferential, obscure tax havens and ways of hiding your money are actually to be found here in the good old United States. Places such as Delaware, or states such as Delaware and Nevada, you can set up tax havens without revealing very little information. But the point is well made.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to know more a little bit about what David Cameron's response was to this, because clearly somebody as poignant as Snowden has put him on the defensive, right? I mean, he feels the need to at least defend himself or his privacy.
Certainly. Under political pressure from home, David Cameron eventually came out and said, listen, he acknowledged the fund, he acknowledged that he had no knowledge of it. This is what he gave as his sort of statement of his assets. Later on in the day, he said, having cited privacy to begin with, he then eventually had to give some kind of statement, which is extraordinary for a for a sitting prime minister to have to do this. But this is what he said: in terms of my own financial affairs, I own no shares. I have a salary as prime minister, and I have some savings, which I get some interest from, and I have a house which we used to live in, which we now let out while we're living in Downing Street. And that's all I have. I have no shares, no offshore trusts, no offshore funds, nothing like that. And so that, I think, is a very clear description. What isn't clear is the extent to which he has profited from this offshore trust or this offshore fund that his father set up a number of years ago, historically. And that's where the pressure is coming, because he's saying now that I will not, in another statement he said, I will not profit or benefit from that fund. Well, the implication is that perhaps historically he has profited or benefited from that. And so there will be continued pressure for him to come clean and to give an explanation on that.
Yeah, I think that even the statement that you just read, that it's either, okay, maybe there's some sincerity there, but there's a tinge, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm a little cynical, but there's kind of this, the prime minister doth protest too much. You know, it's like, what are you hiding? I'm not sure. I guess time will tell, but.
Well, I mean, and I think that's the point that Snowden's making, is under a totally transparent philosophy. Everyone has skeletons in their closet, and everyone has things that they perhaps wouldn't wish to be outed. And under the transparency and the anti-privacy legislation that is being pursued, particularly aggressively in the United Kingdom, all bets are off. And it just demonstrates that there is hypocrisy there, because on the one level, when it affects you, you better believe it, you want the privacy. But when it's other people, oh no, I want to go into their emails, I want to do whatever I want, and don't worry about it. I'm just trawling through it. And if you've got nothing to hide, then don't worry about it. You shouldn't have to worry if you've got nothing to hide. But it's just interesting that his first reaction was to invoke privacy laws. And I think that's what Edward Snowden was doing, was pointing out quite adroitly, was the inherent hypocrisy in that position.